When we consider equality, we obviously want to level the playing field for everyone, but then we have to take into account the intersections between individuals in society. So that could be on account of race, gender, sexuality, socioeconomic status. And it just means that we need to afford those individuals a considered approach when it comes to levelling that playing field.
I think what equity means to me is about embracing individuality and differences. And I think if we did that a bit better, we would actually be able to capture a lot more of the storytelling than we do now.
For me, growing up in a remote community in Lightning Ridge, I didn't see anyone that looked like me in media. And through my work, I would love to change that through positive imagery that celebrates diversity and inclusion. Equity to me means, as an Aboriginal woman, I'm fighting 10 times harder to have a seat at the table. I would like to be given the same opportunities as my peers based on my work and not experience the discrimination and racism that comes with being a woman of colour that's behind the camera.
I think that idea of equity is being talked about a lot more. Like, one of the organisations that I really admire is called Women Photograph, who actually tracks how many front pages women photographers are given across some of the major publications. And unfortunately, that number is still really low, but it really forced the hand of a lot of those publications to start looking at how they're commissioning, how they're kind of thinking about photography and the lens a lot more. And I think that is a really positive step in the right direction. I think there's still a lot of complicated conversations to have, because we also want to be hired based on talent. And we want to be seen that those stories are equal, not because we're being hired because we're women or people of colour or things like that.
In the past couple of years, I have seen more and more women entering the workforce as camera technicians, camera assistants, camera operators, gaffers, and I've seen more women in this field in the last 3 years that I have in my lifetime. And that is so promising. And I think the reason why that has happened is because we've had more women step up in the role of DOP, and therefore they're hiring other women underneath them. And I think that's so important, because with those female heads of department, they bring with them other female technicians, like their camera assistants or gaffers, grips. I've sort of taken it upon myself as well to make sure that when I'm hiring people, that the majority are women of colour, are women from the LGBTQ community, because that's super important to me to see that representation behind the camera.
I think a lot of us have family commitments and the other things that come with being a female photographer. Myself being a mother, it can be hard, but I find that we as women are coming together and creating a community and helping push each other so we can break these boundaries and celebrate each other. Seeing these positive changes and more representation has been really inspiring for myself.
Recently, the ACS came out with a report entitled A Wider Lens. And essentially this report just showed the statistics across the past 11 years in terms of how many female technicians there are in the film industry, specifically behind the camera. And the results were quite shocking. The amount of women compared to men in the industry is completely disproportionate. What was found was that 80% of the camera department was made up of men, 18% was made up of women, and 2% were trans or gender diverse. So looking at those figures, we can see already that there is a massive obstacle when it comes to levelling that playing field. I think the people who are hiring these camera technicians subconsciously feel like men will do a better job because the role is quite technical and there's quite a physical aspect to it. But in reality, we can do it just as good as them. And because unfortunately that gender gap starts from the top, we do have a long way to go in terms of closing it. And that is a huge obstacle within our industry.
I think a lot of what we still need to improve on is around culture. Like, I still feel like there's this sort of creative bro mentality club sort of that I walk onto in sets. Even if I am like the lead creative, I often still feel like sometimes I'm being talked down to, or I just have to prove myself more. And it can just become really alienating and disappointing that that's still an issue, even for people who have reached the level that I'm working at, or even higher than me.
A barrier I have noticed is that I do not come from generational wealth. Life hasn't afforded me the opportunities of being able to study at a young age. I've had to learn everything from the ground up through finding resources on YouTube or through the Canon Instagram. I think that we need to be kinder with each other and understanding that our journeys are all different when it comes to photography and film. And there needs to be more resources for people who want to get into photography and have a barrier when it comes to finance or education. I believe that we as Indigenous photographers should be booked all year round on our own merit rather than filling in a diversity quota. We just need to be given the right opportunities and resources to make this happen. What more can be done is changing mindset around the capabilities of women, and also fair pay and treating women as equal, not less or above equal.
I think it's super important for the government and funding bodies to recognise the process of equity versus equality, and offering grants to minority groups to help them get that leg up, and recognising that not everybody is starting from the same position. And so having companies like Canon granting me money to be able to make my project is super important to me, because I wouldn't have been able to do that by myself. But I've been lucky enough that I've had some amazing male cinematographers who have imparted immense amount of wisdom and knowledge on me, and given my name to other directors in lieu of them if they couldn't do the job. And I think if there were more men out there like that, then, you know, we'd be seeing that gap close.
I do think it's kind of changing that viewpoint of who you're going to take chances on and who you're going to work with. And particularly if there's stories out there that your usual don't really suit, but yet you're just giving it to the usual person that you've worked with, I think it's about those editors and those decision makers thinking about who actually would be well suited. Like, do that research and just see who else can do it. Each photographer has a really unique way of seeing the world. And if you're not going to let 50% of them into the room, you're going to miss out on that story completely.